We now find ourselves in the middle of the 9 days, heading into Shabbos Chazon, the saddest Shabbos in the Jewish calendar, heading into the saddest week on the Jewish calendar, the week leading up to Tisha B'Av and Tisha B'Av itself. Tisha B'Av being, of course, the day upon which the Batei Mikdash were destroyed, terrible tragedies happened in Jewish history, and we spend time focusing on our own actions during this period, and recognizing that we bear responsibility for the destruction of Beis HaMikdash and the fact that it's not rebuilt in our times. We bear responsibility the same responsibility that the previous generations bore. And that was the fact that the Beis HaMikdash, one of the reasons Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, was because of sinas chinam, baseless hatred for no reason. And the way to counter and rebuild the next Beis HaMikdash is by having baseless love, having a tremendous love for our fellow Jew. And one of the areas that I think is important for us to learn from can actually be gleaned from this week's Parsha. That's the very beginning of the Parsha, when Moshe is beginning Sefer Devarim. This is Moshe's final address to the Jewish people on the day that he was going to die. And Moshe starts telling them the whole story of their history. He tells them that as they were in the desert, there were many times that they made HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they made God angry. And he starts listing places, among them Lavan, Chatzeros, Dizav. And these places, Rashi says, he looked throughout the entire Torah and he can't find any places that are named by these names, and that he can't recount any story that had these names in them. So he says, what was Moshe doing? So Rashi explains that as Moshe was criticizing the Jewish people, he did it in a way which was an illusion. He didn't want to say it outright. You know, some of us have the approach of we just say things like it is. And on the one hand, sometimes that's good to say something just like it is. Sometimes there are people who want to say something and they just cover up what they're trying to say because they want to be nice and they don't get to the point. At the same time, there is great value in when wanting to tell someone something, and perhaps even give a little bit of criticism or constructive criticism to someone. There is great value in not saying it to someone in a direct, straight way, but rather giving a bigger picture, rather bringing it on to someone in a very careful and a soft way. And one of the reasons is, says Rabbi Yisrael Mirajin, is that an individual, a person, will simply tune out and won't listen if they're just rebuked in a very direct way without there being a sense of care and a sense of love with it. But if an individual wants to criticize in a constructive way, in a sincere way, someone else in order to help that person, then the way to do so is not by being right to the point and being so crass, but the way to do so is by hinting and letting the person figure out for themselves as best as possible what it is that they did wrong and what it is that they can learn from their action. I think this is a very important message, not just for people in roles of leadership, but also for each of us as individuals, because ultimately, when it comes to the relationships in our lives, we are leaders. We lead other people, whether it is as spouses, or whether it is as children, or whether it is as parents. Ultimately, we all have leadership roles. And we have to remember that when we want to tell someone something that may be viewed by them as being critical, we have to appear to be as sincere as possible if we want them to listen. And this lesson is learned from Moshe Rabbeinu when he wanted to give criticism to the Jewish people, but understood that the only way that they would rightfully accept the criticism that he had to offer was to do so in a loving fashion. May we merit that we have the wisdom to be able to give over the information that we need to in a constructive and sincere way, and that the people that we're sharing information with in such a situation understand that we are trying to do the best that we can in being sincere and caring for them. This is the definition of baseless love. It's my hope and all of ours that with acts like this, that we'll be zocheh to see the third Beis HaMikdash rebuilt speedily in our times, and that Tisha B'Av becomes a day of great celebration. Thank you for listening, and good Shabbos.